All right, thanks for joining us, everyone, for the Go Virtual Career Pathways Conference. Right now, we are going to head into our session 5 out of 6 sessions, so we're almost through. I'm Jewel Clark. I'm actually putting on this conference from the San Diego County Office of Education, and I'm so excited to see you all here and so many folks engaging in the sessions this week. So without further ado, I would like to present you with Cora and Lori, both middle school teachers in San Diego Unified, and they're going to talk about engineering best practices. So Cora and Lori, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Joel. So just to get us started, the screen that's up about affirmations as we move into distance learning, there's just a few of us here, but if you wouldn't mind typing in the chat which statement resonates the best with you right now during distance learning, that would be great. Maybe also say what you teach or what your specialty is while you're at it. I actually did this activity with my students last week, and it was really nice to get them talking about what their concerns are and how they're feeling right now. And we had a lot of positive conversations based on these affirmations.
And I do a bunch of stuff like this too with my students. And so we do have a lot of the same conversations. It's kind of cool.
Okay, so like Jewel told you, we are in our engineering best practices session. This Jewel also mentioned that this session is being recorded, and you will receive your attendance certificate at the end of the session. And I posted the slideshow as a PowerPoint to the conference schedule, so you can find any slides that you want to get to later. My name's Lori Holland. I just celebrated my 20th year teaching science in San Diego Unified. I've taught anywhere from kindergarten to 12th grade, but I've spent most of my time in middle school. So you're going to see a lot of our Bitmojis. Cora and I do this for fun with our students, so that's how we're presenting to you today. 10 years ago, I started teaching robotics with Legos, and 6 years I started coaching. So I've been coaching various First Lego League teams for the last 6 years. And thanks to that experience, I have an engineering credential that allows me to teach a Project Lead the Way automation and robotics elective through CTE.
And my name is Cora Cherjanowski. This is my 5th year teaching middle school at Lewis Middle School, where I teach 3 different project-based subject matters. This year it is engineering, and I do use some Project Lead the Way stuff along with some other things. I also teach digital design with some work-based learning and a coding class where I'm partnered with Qualcomm, and I run summer camps as well. Before this, I spent 3 years teaching architecture and animation at a high school level prior to moving to San Diego. My goal for my classes are to give real-world relatable assignments that combine various strategies for engagement and opportunities for personalization. Before teaching, I grew up working in various fields, including my family-owned machine shop, where I learned how to use everything, all the tools, bandsaws, drill presses, you name it, I can do it. So if it goes with mechanical engineering, a lot of research and development. And then after that, I moved into digital design and became the graphic designer for a local ski resort where I grew up. And then moved into IT, where I was the hardware, software, networking. I was the trainer, I was the webmaster, I was all of that. And then I decided to become a teacher because it worked out with my kids' schedule, and I absolutely love it. So I have partnered with a couple companies down here in San Diego where it really makes a big difference with my classes. And we're going to talk about that as we move forward.
Thanks, Cora. So for our agenda today, there's 4 topics that we're going to cover. The first is transforming face-to-face classrooms to the digital environment. We're going to talk about building community with students, student empowerment and personalization, and then collaborative teaching and resources. The last 2 topics listed here, challenges, success, and integration, and takeaways, that's hopefully a time for us to collaborate a little bit and find out what's happening in your world, what's been successful, what do you still need help with, and if there's anything you can take away from this session, that's always the best sessions for me.
All right, so we know right now we are presented with a bunch of things that we just don't know how to do regularly. So instead of thinking about it as this is a problem, this is something that we just can't do, we need to have that mind shift where we're looking at these challenges as opportunities to learn. We keep telling our students this, but as teachers, we don't always feel this. So it is, the struggle is real every day. It's like everything. We're talking about tech that you have to troubleshoot for your kids. How are they accessing things? How come they can't share? How come they can't? All these little bits and pieces that don't necessarily mean that we wouldn't necessarily do in a classroom or even outside of the classroom, except for now they're at home and we have to in order to make it work. So it's great to keep a positive attitude and look at every day as bringing new challenges, but they're opportunities for us to grow as educators and people so that we can help them instead of looking at it as this overwhelming problem that we can't fix. So it's just a little shift to thinking problem is not a problem, it's a challenge now.
On the next slide, I have a color wheel scavenger hunt. So I not only like to keep my students mentally active, but I also want to keep them physically active after sitting at their computers for hours on end. So we do a color wheel scavenger hunt regularly. I sometimes do scavenger hunts where kids are put into groups in breakout rooms and they get a list of supplies to find. And then they run around their house and the first team back to the main session wins that scavenger hunt. So we're just going to play a quick scavenger hunt with the color wheel. There is a website, spinthewheel.com, and this is an app that you can download as well and customize your own spinners. You can add student names to these. There's just lots of different games that you can play with students. So I'm going to spin the wheel and hopefully you'll be able to find a color somewhere where you're at. If you want to turn on your camera and show us the item that you found or just mention the item in the chat would be helpful.
I did just put the link to that site in the chat as well.
So the first color is cyan. If you can look around and see if you can find an object of that color. You can either hold it up or type that item in the chat.
I don't know if mine.
Thank you, Sarah. Even the pool in the background shows the color we're looking for.
Only in Zoom it shows cyan, but in real life it might be green.
Thank you, Jewel. All right, I'm going to spin the wheel again. And the next color is lime. I have a, let's see, I have a robot kit right here with a lime green sticky note on it with the check mark done because this has had all the parts inventoried by students.
Mine's
has a binder. It's like Jewel has a bag. I know, Sarah, the backgrounds are hard to show items, aren't they?
Fits in my face here. There's a little bit of lime in this coaster.
Thank you.
You have to merge it to your own body so that Zoom recognizes it as part of you.
All right, we'll do one more color and then we'll move on. Thanks for participating. This one is blue. I have my Aloha sticker from Kauai on my water bottle. I see a ruler from Cora. Sarah has is that a book?
It's another coaster.
Oh, another coaster. Thank you. What do you
I have
have,
my
Jewel?
Ethernet cable because I'm at work so that I can plug into this particular item. So
Good idea. In the chat, we have a blue water bottle. We have a blue notepad. Okay, thanks for playing with us. Whoops. Okay, so go ahead, Cara.
Sorry, will you show the other link?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Sure.
Thank you. And I will put that in the chat as well.
Yeah, Cora has another resource as well.
So in my classes, a lot of times I will use Flippity. You have to set it up where on a spreadsheet, just like this, where you put all their names in. And then if you are looking to give students a heads up as to who you're going to call on or what kind of teams you're making or anything like this, this is really fantastic because you can go to the lineup tab. If you will click on that real quick, right there, it'll show all the students who you're going to call on next so that they're not surprised when it's their turn. And it really does help with those students with IEPs and 504s that really need this. It gives them a little bit of a heads up and time to address the question at hand. So this is really fun, and my kids love it because I also use it when I create my teams sometimes for the projects because it can be random. And once we've created community in the classroom, everybody's like, all right, I'll work with them, you know, and it's totally easy to just switch over and click, okay, I'm on a 3-person team, and it puts them into a 3-person team. So this is fun, and I love using this. And then they're like, but I already worked with that person. So I just click it again and again until I get some new setups and it works. So it's kind of fun. Thank you, Lori.
No problem. So our first topic that we're going to talk about is transforming face-to-face to digital. So I typically coach up to my perspective that I'm offering today is about coaching in the virtual world. I still have robotics teams. I do not teach engineering classes until second quarter, but I have been coaching a group of about 25 kids since August. So that's the perspective that I'm giving today during this session. So I typically coach up to 9 robotics teams, and before March, we would meet every day during our advisory period at school. Our challenge now is to provide opportunities that allow those students to still grow as learners through project-based learning, and that it still needs to facilitate more exploration, strategizing, analysis, and reflection. So these are just some pictures of the before. These were taken from our robotics season last year. By August, we already have guest speakers coming into the classroom at least once or twice a week from the industries. We are planning, this time last year, we were planning for our tournament at SeaWorld. SeaWorld was gracious enough to host our practice tournament. We got 2 schools together. I think we had 11 different teams competing all at once, and we got to go do some behind the scenes tours at SeaWorld as well. And then by December, I had students going to their qualifying tournaments and going to the championships at Legoland. So just in the next few months, all of this was happening last year. And then yesterday we had a team meeting, and this is what it looks like now. So it's definitely a completely different environment. So my goal is just to give these kids a valuable experience, whether we are face-to-face or in this virtual world.
All right, and this is my class. This is what it looks like in my classroom. And I do teach engineering and digital design and coding. So I have all kinds of resources in my classroom that I can't necessarily give them while we're doing online. So how do we change it up and how do we make it better and still integrate a lot of hands-on learning while they can still while they're online. So that's been part of my challenge in rewriting everything. As you can see, I do have all the tools there. I have lots of hands-on. We do robotics. The kids go up and write on the whiteboards. They use power tools. They sit and do 3D modeling. We 3D print. We go on field trips. They go to the USS Midway. We usually take a couple trips for my classes because we do a science engineering program there, the disaster prep program that I helped write the curriculum for, which is it's really cool because it's all hands-on. So this is what it looks like in my classroom before. It's always chaos and it's always mess, and I'm so used to, it's okay. I'm so used to them talking all the time. And then now this is what it looks like. So during the summer, I was working with Qualcomm and I hosted a coding camp, and it is all digital. So what happened is I had to give out some kits. So we had a kit pickup day where it was this cool little bag full of goodies, you know, that was full of stuff that has Qualcomm on it, and gave them a whole bunch of resources. And then I used Google Classroom to lay out everything that I needed for each day that they would need to click into, along with full-on presentations. When they do their own presentations, I had them use Flipgrid videos where they recorded themselves. They held up their own projects. They did, because they did their own builds using recycled materials and the stuff that I gave them in their kit. Now in my classroom right now, they're using recycled materials, as well as a couple things I was able to get out to them that will help them with what they're learning right now. Just a quick tip for team presentations. I do put them in breakout rooms, and then I have them use Screencastify because it is a free add-on into Chrome that they can easily do. One little tip though for that is that nobody can be wearing a set of headphones in order to do that recording, right? So if both partners take their headphones off, one person shares their screen just like we are right now, and then both people can talk through the slides, then you will get both people in that video that you can present to the whole class. It takes away that fear of standing up in front of the class. It also takes that fear away from, what if my tech doesn't work? What if I'm super laggy? What if my audio doesn't work? They've already done all this work in the breakout room and where it's just the two of them. So it's way less stressful, and they just sit back and watch their video play. It really has made a big difference in the engagement levels that I've seen by using that.
This next slide, this quote my principal shared with us at a staff meeting a couple of weeks ago, and then I immediately shared it with my students, mostly because I'm having difficulty getting them to turn their cameras on. So I don't require cameras on, but I'm constantly encouraging that my students have cameras on. So I was just reminding them that by being able to see their facial reactions, to see them nod their heads, to see their physical thumbs up, just gives me the feedback that I need to be a better teacher. So if you are teachers in this classroom, or you're a boss and you have employees and you're doing lots of Zoom meetings, if you could just write down some of the ways that either your students or your employees or your colleagues are able to give you feedback during any virtual meetings that you might have. So using Google Forms for feedback, thank you.
Encouragement, yeah.
Using the chat feature or polls on Zoom for feedback. I know once I did this little mini lesson with my students, I definitely got more cameras turned on, but I have to constantly remind them every day. They need that reminder.
They do. You know, I found that they don't necessarily like to use it, but I do have them come on for a quick sec. And then for me, like if there's a video, I have them go off screen, they watch the video, they come back on and show me that they're there for a quick sec, and then I let them back off. But it also is a way for me to say, one of the things that I told them is guys, I'm seeing a black box. I see your name. I'm not going to be able to know who you are. I'm not going to know you when we do go back in person. I really need to be able to see a face to a name because I'm a visual learner. So it reminds them that, hey, we're learning too. So we also, as teachers, need to make sure that students see us troubleshoot things. All right, we're not perfect, and we always assume our kids want us to be perfect, but if we don't teach them how to troubleshoot, they're only going to give us back what we give them. So how do we want them to give us more? Okay, so if we troubleshoot in front of them, like I had a couple glitches the other day where the program we were working in only worked on half the computers and not the other half, and not on the iPads, but on the Chromebooks. It was all over the place. So I turned it on, or I was sharing my screen and working through and Googling and taking step by step how my process is to troubleshoot what they're telling me. So then they were like, oh, but Miss T, how about this? I fixed it that way. And they're helping each other in the chats too, because they found it.
Jules giving us our friendly reminder to fill out the evaluations at the end of the conference. So please make a mental note to do that. And she was talking about, she used to give prizes to her students for finding her mistakes and helping other people fix mistakes.
Yeah.
That's a valuable tool to have, is to be able to accept those mistakes and move on and learn from them.
Exactly.
Something else that I've been doing with my students each day is reminding them to hide their self-view if they're able to. Not all kids are able to do that on the devices that they're using, but they have noticed that students aren't having cameras on just because they don't like looking at themselves. I wouldn't want a mirror in front of me when I'm teaching, so I typically do the hide self-view at the same time each time I remind the kids to do that too. I also teach them how to do speaker view versus gallery view and to toggle back and forth. If their classmates are too distracting for them, then I encourage them just to do the speaker view so that they can focus. But I just ultimately want them to do what's most comfortable for them so that they get the most out of the lesson. Based on the feedback that I got, because I do constantly ask my students for feedback, and the way I use Google Classroom to present my classroom material as my LMS. And at first I was organizing by units, and I did that for quite a few weeks. But after talking to a bunch of students, they encouraged me to change my format and then to start organizing it weekly. So this was something that I wasn't normally doing. I never have. I've always taught by units. It's just how my brain works. But I understand that for students, and as far as how they keep themselves organized from day to day, they needed this daily view. And especially if they miss a Zoom session and they know what day that was, they can just quickly go to the week and the day and find out what they missed. I still use Google Calendar for assignments and due dates. I post those. I have this virtual classroom that I do with my students every day, and the top of the whiteboard is the day of the week. And if they click on that day on any slide, it takes them directly to the Google Calendar, so they can see what's coming up, what's due that day, and what they missed in the past.
Right, and I use Canvas as my LMS. Up until this year, I had it set up unit by unit because I do like Fridays, we do something different than we do the rest of the day. I have an end of the year project. We start at the beginning, like a genius project that is super real world relevant. In the past, I've done theme parks and I've done disaster prep projects, and where we work on it bits and pieces throughout the coming years. So I had it set up by units, but for distance learning, I did switch it up and I set it up week by week. My presentations are set up so that there is a welcome every day with today's focus, what's going to be in there. And then I end with a list of what needs to be turned in at the end of the day. Because by the time we get through 85 minutes, because I have 85 minutes, the kids are forgetting. And if I have this, then they can put it in their notebooks or their planners and things like that. I also have, or Canvas also sets up a to-do list. So as you assign the lessons, to the students and set a due date, it does tell them a calendar, when it's due, when it's coming up. And if they miss it, if they miss the deadline, they see a little red symbol in there that shows that, hey, this is late. You still need to turn this in. It is a nice way to keep a to-do list for the kids or for them to see. And it's just one of those things that pops up in Canvas. You don't have to click on any extra buttons unless you're giving them an announcement or something else. As you can see, I set it up with a welcome. That is my first week. That includes the links to my Zoom. That includes any other information, my syllabus, what to expect, anything we did that first week with our student portfolios and setting it up that way. I have a class yearbook in there, miscellaneous things. Then the next one I have is a set of course resources. Everything that they are going to need during the course that is extra, I put in there. So kind of like their decision matrix and their design process steps and miscellaneous things like that. Now for each week, on the slide right now, you're seeing that I do set my presentations up specific for each day. I have a running list, a running presentation, and then I just pull it out and put just that piece for them for that day. So it's not overload, information overload, and they don't have to go back to the presentation and scroll through until they get to slide 70 for what we're doing today. So it's just what we're doing for that day and what you need to do for homework or for our asynchronous time. I also have a discussion board post for each day. And this is, it's an A day, B day schedule that I have. So for them, it's one every other day that they're doing. And those are very personalized. So we'll talk about that in a few. I create some personal videos of what we're doing and I upload there. As you can see, like the dial caliper is one of them. That's my own video as we were going through it. Because the kids, as if I'm using my doc cam, it's very laggy. It can get laggy on their end. So I just record myself talking through the class and then I post it. So if there's questions that they ask, they can hear it re-answered or it's sharing out across the board for my other periods as well. I also use YouTube. I also use YouTube a lot because there's a lot of really great resources out there. You just have to be able to use it, drop it in, make sure it doesn't have anything that is inappropriate for your school. But it also makes a difference because the kids are seeing someone else teaching the same thing that you're teaching too. So it basically brings back that comfort level going, oh, okay, she's right. Or he's right, okay, it's just another way. Assigning points versus non-graded. Some things are something you want to assign points to, some things you don't. And I believe that was something Lori and I were gonna talk about as to the chat, right? Mm-hmm. All right, so for graded or non-graded. I use the chat a lot. The kids don't necessarily want to use their voices. They don't want to say it there, but they're so used to playing video games and typing super fast and communicating with each other that way. So I have them use the chat a lot. And then I just try to follow along and answer. I try not to call them by name unless it's a really good point. You know what, Sam, that was a fantastic point. Thank you for sharing that. I love that. Or if it's something private that they wanted to share, but it's still a relevant question, I will talk about the question and answer to the question without using their name. They actually prefer it then, because I said, do you guys want to use the chat? Do you want to talk? How do you want to do this? 99% of them said chat. So they were really good at that. And they're more willing to ask for help and help each other in the chat. While I'm talking, somebody will ask a question and then 3 kids will respond with their own version. So they're reteaching the things that I've taught in the chat, which we know helps them connect to the curriculum better. And then we know that they're understanding. So it's pretty cool. And then it's okay to wait for answers. It's really hard to do that. It's super hard to do that because we're like, okay, are you there? hello, crickets, so it is okay to wait. Lori, did you want to add something to that?
I think you really covered it. Thank you. Yeah, all the same kinds of things that I do in my classroom, certainly. And I'm finding too, I have to repeat myself even more than I did when I was in the classroom. Who knows what distractions they have at the moment. So I do repeat myself. I do post the question in the chat just so if that's what they're following along with.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of times they're laggy. So, they'll come back, sorry, Miss T, I didn't get that. So somebody also posted in the chat for me too. So it's kind of cool.
So this next topic that we're going to cover is building community with our students. That is such an important topic to have right now when we're not meeting face to face. With my robotics teams, because I have about 25 kids and those kids are all on broken up into smaller teams, they might be meeting regularly during the week, but I can't make it to their meetings. Sometimes I get to meetings, sometimes I don't, because of my schedule. So what we've enacted is this weekly check-in. So we have the same time we meet every Wednesday from 2 to 3. This gives all the students a platform to share, be seen, and be heard. It's important that they're able to learn from each other. My teams, I have about half of the kids are veterans. They've been on my teams in the past, and the other half are brand new rookies. So it's been really hard to train the rookies on how a season would typically run, but it's not impossible. During these weekly check-ins, my veteran students have taken upon themselves to teach the rookies by leading by example. So it's nice to hear. We do these updates. So I put them in breakout rooms. They work with their team for most of the hour. And then we come back together last 10 or 15 minutes to give team updates. That way they can hear how far along each other are, get ideas, find out what they're working on. And then it encourages ownership on the process, because then they're more willing to have that update ready to go for the rest of the group.
All right. So what I do in my class is, again, I do a daily discussion board post. Again, it's every other day, basically. But since I started that at the very beginning of the year and made it an expectation, what I have found is that the kids, and I did this because I wanted them to identify somehow a little bit about themselves and share out so that I would get to know them and so their classmates would get to know them. So we did a bunch of very basic questions, and then we got into a little bit more personalized ones. Like the example that I put up here is a letter to a friend. They didn't have to tell me what friend. It says, today I miss you, dear friend, today I miss you because. So this is about halfway through our quarter, and they felt very comfortable sharing out some very personal things. But I told them it didn't have to be. You're still taking away that, you're trying to make sure that they're still feeling comfortable with what they're sharing. I said it could be to anyone that you want to write a letter to. Didn't have to be anybody real personal. I just try to make it generalized so they feel comfortable. But what I found is all of my students wrote very personalized letters to their friends in the chat or in the discussion board. And then I always require peer reviews or peer responses. So 2 people, or you have to respond to 2 peers, so that, and everybody was responding back to each other. It was really neat to help build that community by them sharing. In addition, when they first come in, I've made it a norm that they post a hello and they talk about what's happened in the last couple of days. They just post a little bit about themselves. Hey, I just had a math test. I think I bombed it because I didn't know this formula. And that happened to me yesterday, actually. And 3 kids put in Google links and shared formulas for that specific thing to help that, like tutorials to help that student. I do share and tell in breakout rooms, things that they're working on. I try to make sure that if we're doing our isometric drawings, we go over to a breakout room, okay, peer review it. What do you see? What are you looking at? And break it down that way so they don't feel like they're doing it, handing it in to me. I tear it apart because it's right or wrong, or give them grades. And then they come back and they have to redo and redo and redo. It gives them a chance to say, okay, all right, like we would in the classroom, where you have a group that are looking at it and helping each other. So those breakout rooms do help with that. And they're sharing out some more. I want them to talk about more than just the assignment at hand. So when I jump in, it's like, oh, hey, how's it going? You know, and I bring them back to a little more like, hey, what's going on? I love that painting behind your room, you know, or behind your head. What did you do with that? You know, getting them talking is huge for this. I also have a class yearbook where they share out all the things that they're proud of, all the pieces of what they've created throughout this quarter into that class yearbook, and everybody sees it. So it's kind of like their brag sheet. I have them create class music lists, and there was a discussion board post on that, as well as I had them at the very beginning of the year send me links to their music playlist, and then I'll play it through my Alexa while we're doing different projects, or at the beginning of class, or anytime in between when they're working independently. And they're super excited because it's theirs and not mine. So not that my music's bad, but it's their music in their way. And I always ask if they're welcome, if they're willing to share out whose it was. And if they don't, then it's okay. I just play it. And I try to make sure that the assignments are personalized. And we're going to talk about that as we move forward with a couple other things. They're interactive, personalized, and they feel that sense of, this is mine, I'm proud of it.
I use music the same way during class, but I also remind students that they can always mute the host's computer so that they can still, if they choose not to listen to the music or they need a quiet space to work, but then they can still hear me and they can still hear their classmates when needed.
All right, so this is a slide of what it looks like with some of the things that we do in my class. A class gallery of work right there, student-led. We use Stormboards where we share ideas, quick video takeaways. Like if I'm sharing a video or they watch a video, then there's a takeaway. What did you get from that? Peer feedback, they're coming in and they're sharing out, hey, I love this. Oh my gosh, this totally relates to that in this way. They can add, it's really neat to be able to add notes to each other's work and be able to partner them up this way. And they vote on solutions. Here, they can vote on any kind of project solution. This matches this because yes, yes, yes. And they vote on the best matches. It's very interactive and kind of fun. The kids chase each other all around the screen on this one.
So for collaboration, that is critical for this virtual season when we're not meeting together every day. So I've had to come up with different ways for the students to collaborate. Our entire robotics season through First LEGO League revolves around 6 core values. I'm always reminding the kids to keep those core values at the forefront of any work that they do. I stress the one about having fun, that we're stronger when we work together, and then the inclusion piece where we respect each other and embrace all the differences. I involve my teams in every discussion that we have. We don't make any decisions without a consensus from the group. We do polling, we're constantly voting on things before we move on because it ultimately affects their learning. I have the students create their own team norms. There's some on the screen right now. This group of 4 girls came up with these team responsibilities about no slacking off, no fighting. We're a team and we'll stay that way. So each team comes up with their own norms, and they've also assigned each other leads. So you may have a coding lead, or you may have a research lead, or you may have someone that's in charge of getting guest speakers. So this helps them so that they all feel important and have a role to play on the overall success of the team. We have different digital tools that we use for sharing. Cora actually introduced me to Stormboard, which has been a lifesaver as far as how these teams are organizing everything that they need to accomplish throughout the season. And then I have access to this. My co-coaches have access to this. The way the Post-it notes are arranged, you can actually make comments to each other's posts. We obviously we use Zoom. I use Google Classroom. Cora uses Canvas, and she uses Screencastify. I use Jamboard a lot and these Stormboards. And then for the social learning component, we do Flipgrid videos. And we're going to use Flipgrid videos more as far as the actual robot game, which I'm going to talk to us about in just a minute.
And I use Screencastify and Flipgrid for that piece there. If I have multiple people, it's Screencastify.
This is just a more blown up version of the Stormboard that our robot team is called the Claremonsters because we all live in Claremont. And because I have 6 different smaller teams, they've named each of their team names are after a monster from Monsters, Inc. So this is Team Celia. They have used this Stormboard and just ran with it. It evolves every day. I love watching how these girls use it, how they're using it for checklists and assigning tasks. And in Stormboard, you can even send team members messages. So when they're not working together, they're still able to collaborate in a unique way. This is just how the Stormboards evolve. We keep adding more and more sections to it as our robotics season evolves. And then I can post links, important templates that the students need to have. They're able to make lists of what robot missions they're going to work on. And it's just a valuable way that they're communicating throughout the week. So the next part is student empowerment and personalization. And I know we're getting a little bit short on time, so we'll try to run through these as quickly as possible, but not leave anything out. So my students with this virtual world, we don't have access to the robot game. So we're having to find unique ways for them to virtually do the robot. I've put up a template for them where they write pseudocode. So it's more about strategy than anything else. And it helps them save time in the long run, especially if we're able to come back to school in person. They have a decision matrix where they're able to sort the robot missions based on difficulty or number of points. It's complete personalization to them on what they want to focus their strategy on. The robot path, they're going to be creating a similar mat at their houses. Each square is 20 centimeters by 20 centimeters. So they're all going to start cutting squares out and laying them out in their house so that they can start mimicking the behavior of the robot before we even work on the game. They're able to write their own code and then submit that code to me. I have the robot table. You can see a little bit down in the corner of this video. I have this robot game set up at my house. So students are able to share. They're able to share their code with me, and then I download it to the robot, and then I post a video either in Flipgrid or onto their Stormboard so that you can see how their robots did. So there's a question about the software. They can either download the EV3 Mindstorm software on their computer, or they can use makecode.org, which is a free online program that they don't have to download at all. So they have choices about what software they use, and I can access either one. Some of my students, though, my team of 8th grade girls that are all veterans, they aren't happy with the Stormboard format, which is cool with me because they found a different way to stay organized. They created their own Google Classroom to keep each other up to date, and a Google Slides that organizes all of their information. So it's nice to see how students have personalized this process. And like Jewel said, just giving the students choice on how they are able to work together really makes a more successful season.
Right, which totally brings us to this one, dare to be different, student voice equals student choice. What is it they truly need to know, and make it about them? Like, have you ever had to do a project where you're basically being told exactly what to create down to every last detail? Well, how'd you feel about it? Did that project stand out as the best one ever that you're going to talk about forever and ever because you were kind of told everything that you needed, and so you just kind of went through the motions? Well, the reality is that's how our students feel. So regularly in almost all of their classes, because they're told what to think, they're told what to do. So what I have up here on this slide is a bunch of student choice. I gave them the criteria, the problem statement, and then their criteria and constraints, and then how they solved it was up to them. So right here, you're seeing a dream bedroom or a dream a dream home that when we were doing our green architecture, my students laid out. It was their choice, how they wanted to build it, what they thought their dream home would be. This one was a children's toy that had to light up somehow. They created they used the Vex robotics parts and used And they used the lights and as pull string toy and created it so it was fun. The next one is a 3D printed thing where I just said, all right, so here's how you use the 3D printing software. I want you to create me something you want 3D printed. So we went through the training of it, and then their project was what they wanted to create. The next one was a laser cut project right here. This is a box that they created. And then my coding kids did little animations, GIF animations, where they had to code it and put it together. We do perspective drawings. We use spheros, and they drew shapes using the spheros and coding through it. This last one is a Rube Goldberg machine from my students using simple machines, but it was done at home. This was during distance learning. It gave them an opportunity to use what they had on hand to apply the skills that we have given them. So if we shift our thinking into giving them the skills and then they take it and create what they want to create at the end, I have found that more and more of my students are transferring up into the engineering pathway at the high school because they feel like it's not just like, you told me what I need to make. And so that's what I did. That's what engineering is all about. It's not. I want them to be innovative and inventive. So let's not kill their creativity. So we just give them a couple steps. If you go to the next slide, Lori. This is one of the presentations. This is how I grade one of their projects. I grade the process. What did they do at each step instead of what the final outcome was? Because did they define the problem? Did they do the research? Are they demonstrating these things are there? Is what they created what they originally envisioned? Why or why not? Is what was created. What do you think happened? This is one of those projects that goes from table to table to table to table, and each table does a different step based on the documentation they received from the table before. So then at the end, it goes back to the first table, who's the one who created that initial problem. So it gives them a chance to see the process without having done the whole process themselves. And then they have to evaluate it. And then they go back, and I do this at the beginning of each year because then they get a chance to see why they need to know some of these steps. Why do they need to document in their notebook? Why do they need to take notes? Why do they need to share out how big something is? You know, so it's pulling all those pieces together without me telling them exactly what to create, which is kind of cool. And then I always add in the successes and challenges at the end. That is always on every reflection that I ever have them turn in. What were your successes? What were your challenges? And if you had more time, what would you, and to do this over again, what would you do differently? Those are my three main questions for them.
So I know we're even more short on time. This is our last topic, collaborative teaching and resources. This is utilizing the people that you have out there that can support you. Sometimes it feels like we're on an island and we're not alone. So this slide is just showing all the different resources that we utilize through distance learning, whether it's online curriculum, the high school pathway teachers, for your feeder school, family and friends, doing community outreach through local colleges, project-based guest speakers, definitely your CTE district department. Those are resources there that are ready to help you at any time. Using other middle school teachers that have similar related content and doing shared class projects, which is a great tool to have as well. I rely on my guest speakers through our robotics season. They bring in the expertise to my students. And this is just my letter to guest speakers. And then this year, my students are organizing their own guest speakers. So they came up with their own protocol, which is really empowering to see them go for it. We have to do a virtual tournament in January. So we're going to utilize our guest speakers, community members, teachers, the high school students on the robotics team always come and help judge. So we're going to do one large Zoom virtual tournament, and I'm going to put my teams into different breakout rooms with their judges. So we can still go through the whole process of having a full robotics season. We're just doing it online and not in person. And I know, so this last part, challenges, successes, and integrations, Cora put together a Stormboard just for us to fill out if you want to. She posted the link in the chat, the ID and the Storm key are on there as well. Usually if you have a Stormboard account, that's great. You can go straight to the Stormboard. If you don't have one, you can create an account for free. And we encourage you to go in and add some post-it notes, just letting us know what your challenges are, any successes that you want to share with the group. One of the new integrations I'm using is Studio, which is the way students can build virtually with Legos. So they can design their attachments for their robot using this online program. And then it will give me the instructions to build their attachments and try it out with the robot. So if you're able to go to the Stormboard, that's great. You don't have to. We can just kind of watch it and see how it evolves. And the last slide is just about takeaways. So if there's anything that you got from our presentation that you would like to take away, that's my favorite thing about conferences, is what can I use in my classroom tomorrow or on the job? We would love for you to put that in the chat as well. So we're just going to close with the Stormboard, best practices, challenge, success, and integration, and then any takeaways that you might have to take with you today. And then I'll go ahead and go to the last slide, which is the attendance certificate for you if you need that for your district. Sorry, I already have that open. And if you have any questions or comments, I know there's some coming up in the chat and I'll get to those in just a second. Here is the certificate for attendance. The program for building virtually with Legos is called Studio. It's a free download.
And Lisa, thank you so much. We are more than welcome or willing to help out in any way possible with anything you guys may need. It is hard, but you're not an island. You now have us as resources too. CTE has a bunch of resources online. CTE Online is another one that you can go to for some online lessons if you need them. The hardest part is making sure that you just integrate and build community with your kids. That's so important because right now they're stuck at home. You're their lifeline outside of their family. So how do we make them feel comfortable with you and with each other and want to come in and learn something? So I know that my own children are kind of struggling with this online stuff too. So I try to make sure that I bring to my classes what my students or my kids, my own kids, tell me that they miss and they need.
And I'm just putting it in the chat. Lisa had asked you this, what we teach. We are both middle school engineering teachers. We use the Project Lead the Way curriculum. We add in a lot of our own stuff as well, especially trying to get industry speakers and some work-based learning projects. And I'm not sure about Studio with the Chromebooks yet. I just introduced it to my students yesterday, so I'm anxious to hear what their results are. I know it works okay on my PC, but I know all of my students have Chromebooks. Thank you for posting that link for Studio in the chat.
Yeah, thank you. I am a Project Lead the Way master teacher as well. So if you need anything, let me know.
You were fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your experiences today, Cora and Lori. I know Cora mentioned it, when we were starting out that this is her first conference presentation, and I think that it was a pretty darn great one at that. So now we hope to see you at all the conferences coming up, virtual or in person. So thank you both for sharing and for remembering to put in the certificate. So big win on that. And all of the rest of you, hopefully you join us for our next session. There's 6 to choose from in session 6. And then we have our final closing panel at the end of the day. So thanks everyone for joining us. Yeah, I know, Rashawn, it does feel like they've done this a number of times. So
Thank you.
well done. It's like you do it every day with students, and they are the toughest audience. So we appreciate you sharing your learning today, and everyone have a great time at the rest of the conference.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.